J.J. McCarthy's first NFL season may have ended in the most on-brand way possible. A strip sack fumble, a defensive touchdown the other way, and a quiet walk to the locker room that perfectly summed up a year defined by instability, inconsistency, and unanswered questions. Late in the second quarter of Minnesota's 16-13 win over the New York Giants, McCarthy took a hard hit from Brian Burns, lost the ball, and watched helplessly as the Giants returned it for a touchdown. 25 seconds later, his afternoon, and potentially his season, was over. The Vikings ruled him out at halftime with a hand injury, turning the offense over to undrafted rookie Max Brosmer. Whether or not McCarthy plays again this season, the moment felt symbolic. It wasn't just a turnover. It was the latest entry in a debut campaign that never quite found solid footing, a season that never stabilized. If you're searching for a single word to describe McCarthy's first year in the NFL, it's volatile. The Vikings entered the season with a bold plan. After going 14-3 the previous year, they let Sam Darnold walk and handed the keys to their former number 10 overall pick. It was a clear declaration of belief. This was McCarthy's team now. That belief has been tested repeatedly. McCarthy's season has been a stop-start cycle of flashes, injuries, and regression. He has rarely had the opportunity to build rhythm, confidence, or continuity, and when he has, the results have been mixed at best. If Sunday's game was his final appearance of 2025, McCarthy finishes his season with more interceptions than touchdown passes, a completion percentage under 57%, and just 9 starts in a year that was supposed to answer long-term questions at quarterback. Instead, it raised more. The numbers tell a sobering story. Strip away the context and look purely at production, and the picture isn't flattering. McCarthy's season totals, assuming he doesn't return, read like those of a quarterback still searching for his footing. 56.8% completion rate, 161.1 passing yards per game, 11 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, multiple missed games due to injury. Even on Sunday, before the injury, McCarthy struggled to protect the football. He threw an interception earlier in the game and lost the fumble that led directly to points. He finished 9 of 14 for 108 yards with no passing touchdowns, adding 1 rushing score. The Giants game didn't sink Minnesota, but it reinforced the lingering concerns surrounding McCarthy. The margin for error is too thin and the mistakes are too frequent. From optimism to uncertainty. It's important to remember how this season started. McCarthy's NFL debut in Week 1 against the Chicago Bears offered genuine hope. After a shaky start, he exploded in the fourth quarter, accounting for 3 touchdowns and leading a dramatic comeback win in prime time against a division rival. For one night, it looked like the Vikings had found their guy. That performance bought McCarthy patience and goodwill, but it also set expectations that the rest of the season struggled to meet. The following week against Atlanta was a step backward. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Then came a high ankle sprain that sidelined him for 5 games and effectively stalled any momentum he had built. From that point forward, McCarthy's rookie season became a series of interruptions rather than a progression. Injuries changed everything. McCarthy's development hasn't just been slowed by poor play, it's been derailed by availability. Between the ankle sprain, a concussion later in the season, and now a hand injury, McCarthy simply hasn't stayed on the field long enough to settle in. For a young quarterback, that matters. Reps matter. Continuity matters. Confidence matters. Instead, McCarthy has been forced to restart over and over again, often returning to an offense that had changed rhythm without him. The most painful example came in Week 13, when McCarthy was sidelined against the Seattle Seahawks, the team now quarterbacked by Sam Darnold. Darnold carved up Minnesota in a 26-0 embarrassment while Brosmer ran the Vikings offense. It was a stark reminder of the gamble Minnesota took when it moved on from its veteran quarterback. The Vikings' big bet is still unresolved. Minnesota didn't just draft McCarthy, they committed to him. Letting Darnold walk after a 14-3 season wasn't about cap space or circumstance. It was about belief. The front office believed McCarthy was ready to lead a roster built to compete right now. That belief hasn't been validated yet. The Vikings sit well outside serious playoff contention, And while the team has strung together wins late in the season, those victories have come against struggling NFC East teams. They don't answer the larger question. Has McCarthy shown enough to be the unquestioned quarterback of the future? Right now, the answer is unclear. Shatch signs of hope, but not enough clarity. To be fair, McCarthy hasn't been all bad. In weeks 14 and 15, he arguably played his best football of the season, leading decisive wins over Washington and Dallas. In those two games, he threw 5 touchdowns and just 1 interception, showing improved decision-making and confidence within the offense. Those performances are the reason the Vikings haven't completely lost faith. They show what McCarthy can be when healthy, protected, and decisive. But 2 games don't outweigh a season's worth of inconsistency. What happens next defines everything. If McCarthy's season is over, the Vikings head into the offseason with one of the league's most complicated quarterback evaluations. They don't have a disaster on their hands, but they don't have certainty either. McCarthy has talent. He has moments. He has shown flashes of leadership and resilience. But he hasn't shown durability, consistency, or command over an entire season. And for a team that believed it was one quarterback away from contention, that's a dangerous place to be. A fitting but incomplete ending. If the strip sack against the Giants ends up being the final snap of McCarthy's year, it will feel fitting, even if unfair. A season that began with optimism ends in uncertainty. A quarterback drafted to stabilize the franchise instead leaves it with more questions. A year meant to define the future instead delays it. J.J. McCarthy's rookie season wasn't a failure, but it wasn't a success either. It was unresolved. And for the Minnesota Vikings, that may be the most uncomfortable outcome of all. J.J. McCarthy's first NFL season may have ended the same way it often unfolded, abruptly, painfully, and with more questions than answers. Late in the second quarter against the New York Giants, McCarthy dropped back, scanned the field, and never saw Brian Burns closing in. The hit was violent. The ball came loose. The Giants scooped it up and ran it back for a touchdown. 25 seconds later, McCarthy was walking off the field holding his hand. By halftime, he was ruled out. That single play felt like a summary of the entire season. If McCarthy doesn't take another snap this year, his rookie campaign ends not with clarity or momentum, but with uncertainty. And that uncertainty now hangs over the Minnesota Vikings at the worst possible time. From a purely statistical standpoint, the season was underwhelming. McCarthy finishes 9 starts with more interceptions than touchdowns, a completion percentage under 57%, and an offense that rarely looked comfortable when he was on the field. He showed flashes, moments where the arm talent and athleticism popped, but those moments were isolated. They never stacked, and they were constantly interrupted by injuries. That's what makes this season so volatile. It wasn't just bad play, it wasn't just health. It was the combination of both, layered on top of massive expectations created by the decision to move on from Sam Darnold. That decision now looms over everything. The Vikings didn't just draft McCarthy. They chose him. They let Darnold walk after a 14-3 season. They handed the offense to a quarterback coming off a meniscus injury with limited NFL experience and asked him to lead a roster built to compete immediately. That was a bet. Not just on talent, but on readiness. And right now, it looks like a bet that came too early. McCarthy's season began with promise. Week 1 in Chicago was exactly the kind of debut teams dream about. Prime time, division rival, early struggles followed by a fourth-quarter surge, 3 touchdowns late, a comeback win. For a moment, it felt like Minnesota had found its guy. But the NFL doesn't reward moments. It demands consistency. The following week against Atlanta, the cracks showed. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, then the high ankle sprain, 5 games missed, development stalled, momentum gone. When McCarthy returned, it was more of the same cycle. A solid win against Detroit, then 3 straight losses, a concussion, another absence, and finally the humiliating loss to Seattle, delivered by the very quarterback Minnesota decided wasn't worth keeping. That game may have done more psychological damage than any other. Sam Darnold walking into US Bank Stadium and shutting the Vikings out 26-0 while McCarthy watched from the sideline wasn't just symbolic. It was haunting. From that point on, every McCarthy snap carried extra weight. To his credit, he responded late. The wins over Washington and Dallas were easily his best stretch of the season. 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, better command, better rhythm, better decisions. For the first time since week 1, it felt like progress was finally happening. And then came Sunday. Another interception, another turnover, another injury, another early exit. The strip sack wasn't just costly because it resulted in a defensive touchdown. It was costly because it reopened every doubt the organization hoped was starting to close. Ball security, pocket awareness, durability, readiness. Even in victory, the Vikings walked off the field without answers. Now the questions are unavoidable. Is McCarthy simply too raw to lead a win-now roster? Did the Vikings misjudge how much time he would need? Did they rush him back too quickly after multiple injuries? And most importantly, can they afford to keep riding this development curve while the rest of the roster ages? None of those questions have clean answers yet, but the injury complicates everything. With 2 games left, Minnesota doesn't know if McCarthy will return this season. They don't know the severity of the hand injury. They don't know if more setbacks are coming, and they don't know whether the flashes they saw late are real growth or just small sample optimism. What they do know is this: the plan was supposed to be simpler. McCarthy was supposed to be the next step forward, not a reset. He was supposed to stabilize the position, not reopen it. Instead, the Vikings are heading into another offseason with uncertainty at the most important spot in sports. That doesn't mean McCarthy can't still become the guy. Quarterbacks develop on different timelines. Plenty of successful NFL careers started shakily. But the margin for patience shrinks when expectations are high and alternatives are visible. And Sam Darnold thriving elsewhere has made patience harder. If McCarthy's season truly ends on that strip sack, it's not just a rough ending. It's a fitting one. A season defined by interruptions, inconsistency, and unrealized promise, ending with a single play where protection breaks down, the ball comes loose, and control slips away. The Vikings won the game, but they may have lost something more valuable: confidence in their timeline. What happens next will define not just McCarthy's future, but the direction of the franchise. Because right now, Minnesota isn't just wondering how good J.J. McCarthy can be. They're wondering how long they can afford to wait to find out.